Gonzaga's aggressive pursuit of top 2026 recruits is connected to the House settlement and a great sign of things to come.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Well, folks, Gregg had a few more NBA pre-draft workouts. We'll talk about that to close out the show, plus how Chet and Andrew have done through the first three games of the NBA Finals ahead of Game 4, which is tonight, Friday, as many of you are listening to this show. We'll get you a quick preview of that as well. But first, we're going to talk about Gonzaga's 2026 recruiting targets, which we've done a handful of times throughout the last few weeks here on Locked On Zags, as they are now connected to 4 or 5 different players in the class, including some of the more highly regarded players, including the number 1 overall ranked player in the 2026 class. But I want to talk a little bit about the recruits, but also kind of a theory that I've had rattling around in my brain and that I think is a little bit more solidified now that we have actually seen the House versus NCAA settlement come to fruition. We talked about this earlier in the week on Monday's episode, as we had gotten the announcement on Friday night that the House settlement was approved, and we've kind of talked about what that means, the early thoughts for these Zags and how it impacts them, as well as the move to the Pac-12 starting in 2026. And so I kind of want to talk about it again from the perspective of maybe why Gonzaga's recruiting in the 2026 class feels a little different than we've seen from them in the last couple of years. And again, Gonzaga has ebbed and flowed in their recruiting in the past. It's not crazy for them to have a year or two where they add very few high school players or 0 high school players or just 1, and they weren't really ever connected to a lot of big names. And then they'll have a few years where they bring in massive classes, 2, 3, 4 players. It's been a while since it was 4 players, but 2 to 3 players, some of them very highly regarded. We've seen 5 stars in the not too distant past: Hunter Salas, Chet Holmgren, of course, Jalen Suggs, before that, Zach Collins, but even like high 4 stars like Julian Strother and many others as well. And then we'll have years where it's pretty empty or pretty quiet and there's not a lot of attention on it. And I think when we look at 2026, yeah, it's possible that Gonzaga being connected to multiple 5-star players, multiple top 25 players in this recruiting class could just be par for the course. It could just be them liking these guys. It may not necessarily have a huge meaning outside of that, but I do think it's connected to the House settlement, which again came out about a week ago. I'll reiterate some of the stuff we already talked about there. For you everyday listeners, you will have heard this. For those of you who are didn't miss this episode, this will be a good kind of primer on this. Every school is going to have about $20 million as the cap amount of money that they are allowed to spend on their student athletes. As a bit more stepping back, the House settlement means that schools can directly pay student athletes for NIL. They don't have to go through a third-party collective. There can still be third-party NIL deals, but they can go. You have a maximum of $20.5 million, roughly. That exact number is still being finalized, but every program will be able to spend $20 million on their student athletes. The majority of programs are expected to split their money roughly 75% to football, 15% to men's basketball, 5% to women's basketball, and 5% collectively to all of the rest of their programs combined. This is an estimate based on how the $2.8 billion in back pay is being paid to student athletes. So it is just an estimate. Some programs will do it differently. Kentucky will probably spend more than 15% on men's basketball, for example. But that is a rough estimate. And for those programs that are spending the maximum amount of money, let's assume it's around $20 million, that limits them somewhere to $2.5 to $4 million for men's basketball. Gonzaga, of course, if they can get up to spending $20 million annually, they will certainly be paying a higher percentage of that money to men's basketball. Whether the other programs make a push to say, hey, since we don't have football, we think it's fair if you give us a higher cut, blah, blah, blah. Maybe that happens, but ultimately I wouldn't be surprised if Gonzaga is spending 75% of the money that they have to spend on men's basketball. This is a complete guess on my end. By the way, do not take this as anything other than speculation, but I would guess 70, let's say 75% for basketball, for men's basketball, 15% for women's basketball, 10% to everything else. That still means that, the other sports are getting a little bit higher of a cut in theory than the, baseball and soccer will be getting a little bit more money than they might get at SEC schools or Big Ten schools. But women's basketball is certainly 15% compared to 5% for the other schools. That's a big difference. And obviously for men's basketball, it's a huge difference. Again, the Zags need to be able to get to $20 million annually. But if they do, you'd be looking at something like $15 million on men's basketball, $3 million on women's basketball, $2 million on the other sports. The problem is, of course, Gonzaga needs to be able to actually get to that amount of money. And that's where the Pac-12 media deal comes into effect, which we are still waiting on as of this recording in the afternoon on Thursday. We know that the Pac-12 grant of rights has been signed. We know that that means that the media deal announcement is coming very soon. We have heard speculation that ESPN, the CW, and CBS, which were all part of the 2025 media deal, which is just Oregon State and Washington State football. But regardless, we know those three media partners are involved in 2025 and are expected to be involved in 2026 and beyond. But we don't know the amount of money. We don't know how much money Gonzaga will get annually from the Pac-12. There are some reports that say $11 to $15 million for the Pac-12 schools. There's some that say $7 to $10 million. So we don't exactly have a good sense. But if Gonzaga is going to get, let's say it's $11 million from the Pac-12, then they have to raise $9 million per year. That's still a lot of money, but it is doable. It is doable to get to that amount of money and be able to spend close to $15 million on men's basketball. And even if you get to 15 million total instead of 20 million, let's say you're only spending 15 million. Sure, the SEC schools are spending 20 million. But if you're spending 15 million and 75% of that's going to basketball, you're still outspending the SEC schools. Now, again, because third-party NIL deals are allowed, there's not a lot that's stopping a mega booster at Kentucky or Texas or wherever from being able to funnel money to a student athlete through a third-party NIL deal. It's not against the rules. It wouldn't even be a violation. It's just something that they're allowed to do. Now, there is a committee that is being charged with evaluating every NIL deal over $600, and they will evaluate this. They will determine if a player is getting paid $4 million from a car dealership, and all they have to do is show up once for 30 minutes and wave their hands. In theory, this College Sports Commission should see that and say, hey, that is not being paid. The scope of the payment versus what you're asking them to do is not fair or valid. We're going to shut this down. That's what the committee is designed to do. Will they actually implement these things? Will they be able to stop rampant amounts of programs trying to pay guys in discrete ways? Probably not. Probably not. But it should still limit it in a sense that Gonzaga should have an advantage financially. And I think that this is why we are seeing the Zags be so proactive in the 2026 recruiting class, because they know they're going to have some money to spend, and more than that. And I think this is a key part of it. Strike now, because these programs, these big name schools, they have a lot of stuff that they need to figure out. How much money do we want to spend on men's basketball? How are we going to find ways to game the system and pay our players a little bit more money? And while they're figuring that out, they may be a little bit more hesitant to go after expensive players in the 2026 recruiting class. They may not know, hey, Tyran Stokes is asking for $1.3 million. We don't know if we can give him that because we don't know if our budget for basketball is going to only be $2.5 million. And while we're waiting on that, and while we're concerned about promising him that amount of money and then trying to back funnel it through third-party NIL deals that may get rejected, while that's all happening and these programs are kind of spinning their wheels a little bit, Gonzaga can come in and say, hey, we know we're getting $9 million from the Pac-12 or 12, whatever it is, so we'll give you your $1.3 million. We'll give it to, we promise you that. We know we got it for you. You're going to get it. Here you go. That is a realistic possible scenario here for Gonzaga. Tyran Stokes is the cream of the crop in the 2026 class, and he's from Lexington, and I think it's going to be hard to pry him away from Kentucky. But this is why Gonzaga's in the mix. This is why Gonzaga reportedly has Tyran Stokes scheduled to visit the number one recruit in the country. It doesn't happen very often. But I do think that Gonzaga's pursuit here is tied to the fact that they may feel like they have a bit of a competitive advantage that may not last all that long. It may be short-lived as these programs eventually figure out how to catch up and get themselves in a position where they can comfortably spend the same amount as Gonzaga because they're just funneling it through third-party NIL deals. I do think that will happen, but I do think that there's kind of a window of time where maybe Gonzaga can strike while the iron's hot and try to make some moves when they have a bit of an advantage. So we know, again, Tyran Stokes is the player they're connected to. Akena Elozi is the second-ranked point guard in the 2026 class, the 10th-ranked overall player. He also is supposed to visit. Both Stokes and Elozi have said they are visiting Gonzaga, but they have not set official dates to do so. They're also pursuing the 24th-ranked player in the class, Tony Bryant, a power forward, although they have not made him an offer or really set any visits with him yet. And then there's Sam Funches. And I want to talk about Sam Funches once again. He's 2026 center, the 4th-ranked center in the class, has bumped all the way up to number 31 overall in the 2026 class. This is all according to On3's industry rankings, by the way. Funches confirmed to me a few weeks ago we spoke, and he said that he was either going to visit for Craziness in the Kennel or for Hoop Fest at the end of this month. I reached back out to him. He confirmed that he is set to visit for Craziness in the Kennel. So he is visiting, taking his official visit to Spokane in October. The date for Craziness has not been set. It is widely expected to be October 4th, the first Saturday of the month. So I would expect that is when Sam Funches will be on campus. He's a tremendous player. He was supposed to visit back in February, but his visit was postponed because his team was still in the state playoffs. And in fact, they won the state playoff. So good on Sam for sticking that out with his team and leading them to a ship. Now he's set to visit in October. He's currently playing at the NBPA Top 100 camp. He is balling out right now. Lots of great coaches there visiting, watching him. Hopefully that will not be a problem for Gonzaga at this point. He has over 25 offers. So he's already been heavily pursued. He's already taken an official visit to Kansas, to Ole Miss, and to Cal. He has plans to visit not only Gonzaga, but LSU, Vanderbilt, and Mississippi State as well. But the fact that he has now set an official visit to Spokane, that it is in October, is a good sign for Gonzaga. You love being able to get those kids on campus for an event like Craziness in the Kennel, get to see the place going crazy, get to see all the excitement, the hoorah, all that good stuff. So this will be a great opportunity for the Zags to land what would be a very, very big fish in the 2026 recruiting class. We'll have more on this recruiting class, more on the house settlement coming up over the next couple of weeks, months, realistically, as this is such a huge talking point in college athletics and a big thing for Gonzaga specifically. So we will be back with this topic very soon. But for now, I want to move on to the NBA Finals. The Pacers came into the finals as heavy underdogs, but folks, they're up 2-1, and they got a home game on Friday. Can Andrew Nembhard's club pull off a stunning upset? We got more on that in just a second. But first, folks, you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Because between dining out, online shopping, and just general entertainment costs, it's pretty easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. And Monarch Money isn't just another budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. And instead of juggling multiple different apps, you can use Monarch to track your finances, track your spending, and even set your long-term goals. My wife and I always want to make sure that we are on the same page when it comes to our finances, especially with a 15-month-old in the house. We've got to prep for her future. And that's why we love Monarch Money, because managing money with your partner, it's easier than ever before. You can track your shared and your personal accounts, set your goals together, and stay on the same page without all the added stress. So folks, take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. And those of you on YouTube, you can still see the two jerseys, Chet Holmgren right there, Andrew Nembhard right there, as we are in the NBA Finals. 3 games down, potentially as many as 4 more to go, with game 4 set for Friday. And right now the Pacers are up 2-1 in the series, despite coming in to the series as one of the biggest underdogs in NBA Finals history, according to multiple sports books. This Indiana Pacers team was one of, if not the biggest underdog ever. I think the 2001 Philadelphia 76ers, who were going up against the 0-1 Lakers, I think were the biggest underdog, at least according to one place that I saw. But this Pacers team was certainly in that conversation. And for understandable reasons, the Thunder were the number one overall seed in the Western Conference. The Pacers were a 4 seed in the Eastern Conference, who some people felt kind of skated by because Boston had the Jason Tatum injury. But I'll tell you what, this Pacers team took out the number 1 seed Cleveland Cavaliers. They took out a very good 3-seeded New York Knicks team. Like, this is a very, very good team, and they have looked like the better team despite not really leading for very much of the series. I think total in the 3 games, which again, they've won 2 out of those 3. I think they've led for like 20 minutes total. I can tell you this, I know for a fact in game 1, which the Pacers won 111-110, the Pacers for the entirety of the game had a lead for just 0.3 seconds. And those were the final 0.3 seconds of the game, as you would expect. Tyrese Halliburton came down the floor, hit a jumper, gave them their first lead of the game with 0.3 left on the clock, and they were able to secure the W. That's what Tyrese Halliburton has been doing throughout this playoff series. He's just put this team on his back and carried them to now being on the precipice of an unheralded NBA Finals run. However, the Thunder responded with a comfortable win in Game 2, 123-107 was the final score, and really it wasn't even that close. They had a pretty comfortable lead all throughout, and just kind of, I don't want to say it took their foot off the pedal necessarily in the fourth quarter, but we're up by a comfortable enough lead that even when the Pacers tried to storm back, they managed to hold on. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had 34 in that game, along with 8 assists. Meanwhile, former Santa Clara Bronco Jalen Williams, 19 points, 5 boards, and 5 assists in that one. But then the Pacers stormed back with a win of their own in Game 3, 116-107. And yep, they were down going into the fourth quarter. They were actually down 5 when the fourth quarter began. It was 89-84 was the final score. And then the Pacers outscored the Thunder 32-18 in the final frame to not only storm back and win, but to win by a fairly comfortable 9-point margin. A huge credit to former Arizona guard Ben Mathurin, who went crazy off the bench. 22 minutes played. He had 27 in that one. Meanwhile, Tyrese Halliburton, ho-hum, he just had nearly a triple-double in a key win for the Pacers. 22 points, 11 assists, and 9 rebounds. Well, you may be thinking, that's great about Tyrese Halliburton and Ben Mathurin and Jalen Williams, but how are our guys doing? Yeah, let's talk about that. Chet Holmgren, through 3 games, he's averaging 13.5 points, 7 boards, a little over a half a block per game. He's shooting 52% on 2-pointers, but he is shooting just 10% on 3-pointers and 92% from the line. In Game 1, he had just 6 points and 6 boards along with the block. He was 2 of 8 on 2-point attempts, 0 of 1 from 3. Rough first game for Chet in that one. But then he was better in the other 2 games. Game 2, he was 15 points and 6 rebounds. He was 5 of 8 on his 2-point attempts in that game, but just 1 of 3 from 3, made both his free throws. And then in Game 3, he had a good stat line. It looked good. 20 points, 10 rebounds. That's anytime you could put up 20 and 10, you got to feel pretty good about that. Not a ton of players who've put up 20 and 10 in an NBA Finals game, but it wasn't exactly an efficient performance. Again, I'll read basically every stat. 20 points, 10 rebounds, 6 of 9 on 2-pointers, 8 of 9 from the free throw line. That is all fantastic. You just got to ignore the middle part where he took 6 3-pointers and missed every single one of them. That did not help him or the Thunder in that game, but he was great at scoring around the rim, great rebounder, ended up with 20 points. Obviously, 8 of 9 from the free throw line for a big is fantastic. So Chet has been okay. His 3-point shot has been kind of broken the entire playoffs. He hasn't shot it well from 3 in really any of these series. He's been a good rebounder. He's been a good shot blocker. Certainly at times he's had to handle Nikola Jokic and Rudy Gobert and Jaren Jackson Jr., some really good bigs during the run up to this NBA Finals. So he's a little bit worn down, I would imagine, and obviously only played 35 regular season games after missing so much of the season with that hip injury. But I think for Oklahoma City to pull this off, to pull off the 3 wins they need, they're going to need Chet to look a little bit better. I don't think like the 3-point shooting, like you'd love that to come around, but they can survive without him spacing the floor that way. But they need him to stay tenacious down low. They need him gobbling up rebounds. They need him playing well on the defensive end of the floor. And he has been okay, but not the player exactly that they need him to be just yet. kind of a lot of the same things are true with Andrew Nembhard. He has been good at times. He has hit clutch shots. He had a really big time three in that first game over Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. It didn't quite give him the lead, but it kept them really close, and it ultimately led to Tyrese Halliburton's game winner in that one. But the numbers haven't really popped exactly for Nembhard. In game one, he had 14.6 assists and 4 boards, 2 of 5 on twos, 2 of 6 from 3. Game 2, he had 11 points, 4 assists, 4 boards, 3 of 4 on the 2-pointers, but just 1 of 4 from 3. And then in game 3, his lowest scoring performance of the finals, just 8 points, also just 1 assist, also 4 rebounds. He had 4 boards in all 3 of those games. He was 2 of 3 on his 2-pointers, but just 1 of 2 from 3. So all told, Nembhard averaging 11 points, 3.5 assists, 4 rebounds per game, shooting 58% on his 2-pointers, 33% from 3, only 64% from the free throw line. Granted, it is a very small 11 free throw attempt sample size for Nembhard. Game 4 coming up on Friday, June 13th. 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, 8:30 Eastern time. The game will be at Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, the home of the Indiana Pacers. It will be on ABC, just like the rest of these games have been. Right now, despite the fact that this is a road game, despite the fact that they are down 2-1 in the series, the Thunder are not only favorites, they are 6-point favorites, which is pretty significant in an NBA Finals game for a road team. That is what the betting lines are saying, though. If you feel pretty confident in Oklahoma City, then you might be smashing that one. But if you think, hey, it's the Pacers kind of feel like a team of destiny. Rick Carlisle's done this before. He led that Dallas team to a win over Miami a little over a decade ago. That was unexpected, and I think people kept waiting for Miami to just turn around and win it, and they never did. Maybe the Pacers are going to do the same thing this time around. It's certainly worth exploring, at least, if you are into that kind of thing and want to head out to FanDuel. I'm really excited about this series. I'm really excited about this game coming up on Friday. And depending how many more games there are, we'll have one, I think, on Monday and then a Thursday next week if necessary. But it's been real fun to see these two Zags getting a chance to compete at the highest level of professional basketball. Well, speaking of Zags going to the highest level, Ben Gregg added a pair of workouts with NBA franchises. We now know at least 3 workouts for Ben as he gets ready for the NBA draft. Also, Patty Mills made a surprising career move. We'll talk about that, and heartbreaking timing for Allie Quigley's retirement announcement. We'll talk about what that has to do with Gonzaga and why we're discussing it to close out the show in just a second. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. Closing out the show with a couple of tidbits around Gonzaga basketball as we head into the weekend. First, Ben Gregg, according to his father, Matt Gregg, which is how we get most of our information about Ben, as his dad is very active on social media, posted a pair of pictures of Los Angeles Clippers jersey and a Dallas Mavericks jersey, saying that Ben had just 2 workouts this week. He said it was a quiet week for Ben, just a pair of workouts, which does make me think that Ben has been having quite a few more workouts than we have seen reported on social media by teams. And again, I mentioned this earlier this week with Ryan Nembhard, that the amount of workouts that these players are doing with teams individually or in groups, there's a ton of them. They're happening all the time, and they're just not being reported very often. So we don't have a ton of super up-to-the-minute accurate data on these workouts and how often they're happening. But what we do know is that Ben Gregg this last week had workouts with the Dallas Mavericks and the Los Angeles Clippers. We also know that he had a workout earlier in the month of June with the Portland Trail Blazers, his hometown team, as Ben grew up in the Portland area, went to Clackamas High School before starting his career at Gonzaga. So very cool. And I mentioned this with Ben before, and I'll say it again here. Ben is not very likely. It's very unlikely that Ben will get drafted in the NBA draft. He has not showed up on any mock drafts. He does not show up on big boards. The skill set, while it is there and it is intriguing at least, it is very unlikely that he will be among the 59 players selected. That doesn't mean that teams are not interested in him. Obviously, he's being, shipped out to various cities across the country to work out with these teams by their request, but they're bringing him in primarily to look at him and evaluate him as a potential summer league addition. Summer league obviously is kind of the first step after the draft happens. You get your draft picks, your undrafted free agents, you collect some other guys, you put them together on a roster, let them duke it out for a few weeks in Las Vegas, and then you determine which of these guys do we want to sign to guaranteed contracts, which guys do we want to sign to 2-way contracts, which guys we want to bring in on Exhibit 10 deals, which basically just means we're holding your rights and bringing you to our training camp where we might cut you later, or we might hold on to your rights and put you on our G League team, or even sign you to a 2-way contract where you then get guaranteed time in the NBA. So that's what Ben Gregg is being evaluated as right now. Is this a guy we want to put on our summer league roster? Is this a guy we think has enough skill that if we bring him into summer league, he could pop and play well and potentially end up on our G League team? And I totally get it for Ben. While the skill set is, the athleticism is maybe not NBA caliber, and 3-point shooting took a big dip last year, which I think has really hurt his draft stock. He's a 6'10" big man who works really hard. He loves to hustle. Physically, he's big and intimidating and has worked really hard on his body. He went to a program that has an NBA style offense in Gonzaga that has produced NBA talent. Like, it's very easy to see why NBA teams would be like, yeah, this is the guy we want to bring in. We want to see what we got here. If he can space the floor, if he can be consistent, we know the high basketball IQ, the offensive rebounding, the tenacity, we know it's all there. Let's see if he can put the pieces together. So I'm really interested to see what happens with Ben. I think Ben, Caliph, and Nolan Hickman are all guys who are not going to get drafted, but who will end up playing summer league somewhere and getting a chance to compete for a roster spot. And I think it's going to be fun to kind of track that throughout the rest of this summer as we get into October and the start of the NBA season. A couple other quick updates here. Patty Mills, former St. Mary's legend, probably the most recognizable St. Mary's figure outside of maybe Randy Bennett. And Patty Mills, it was announced that he became a general manager for a college basketball program, and you'd think he's a slam dunk college basketball GM for St. Mary's, but no. He's now taking over as the general manager for Hawaii, the Rainbow Warriors, bringing in Patty Mills as the GM as they move into the Mountain West Conference. This would sort of be the equivalent of like if Adam Morrison became like, pick any school, became like Eastern's general manager or Idaho's GM. Like it would be like, oh, that's not where you went. That's not like where we associate you as being. Patty Mills spends his off seasons living in Oahu. He's a huge proponent of Hawaii. He's done a lot of charity work there. He's done events there he's put on. So it kind of makes sense. He's invested in the culture. He's invested in the community. He wants to help out. It's worth noting that these GM roles are in some ways honorary. Like I saw a post on social media. Somebody's like, well, wouldn't you rather live in Hawaii than Moraga? Like, yes, but I don't think that Patty Mills is like, he's not going into an office 40 hours a week to do this GM job. Like, let's put it that way. Like, that's not how this is happening. He's raising money for the program. He's raising awareness for the program. Shaquille O'Neal is the GM for the Sacramento State Hornets. And like, I see Shaq on the TV all the time. He ain't sitting around in an office somewhere at Sac State. Like, that's just not how this is working. So it is still interesting though, that Patty took this job, and St. Mary's does not have a GM, at least not publicly known. Neither does Gonzaga, for what it is worth. I think that will change. I don't know how recently, I don't know when or who or how or anything like that. But to see Patty Mills takes GM job and it not be at St. Mary's was just threw me for a little bit of a loop. And I thought we'd toss it into the mentions here. And then last but not least, I don't know if you guys saw this on social media, on Instagram is where I was seeing a lot of it. Allie Quigley, the wife of Courtney Vandersloot, of course, the Gonzaga legend who recently suffered a torn ACL and will miss the rest of the season for the Chicago Sky, a potential career-altering or even career-ending injury, as Sloot will not be healthy and able to suit back up in a WNBA game until she is probably 37, maybe 38, depending on how long the recovery takes. So that's kind of been the story around Courtney Vandersloot lately after she suffered the injury. Is she going to retire? Is she going to come back? When's the surgery going to happen? And what was a very pre-planned event, Allie Quigley, who has not played in the last couple of years, officially announced her retirement. She had not done so yet, but she made a big announcement on social media. I'm retiring. I'm done. I'm hanging them up. The Chicago Sky set a date to retire her jersey. And they made a lot of social media posts about this. Big deal. And I know it was pre-planned. It was obviously they had a date set. I mean, they'd already set the date for the jersey retirement ceremony. So clearly all of this was planned ahead of time. But to see Courtney celebrating and posting all this stuff about her wife and how much she loves her and like, congratulations on a great career, just days after she suffered an injury that she knows may end her career as well. It was just kind of heartbreaking to see it all unfold. I don't know. Again, if you saw these posts, maybe it didn't register. Maybe you did think the same as me, but like, I just felt really awful. I mean, I feel awful for Courtney in general and for Allie. I mean, this is a horrible situation for both of them. It's no fun to see somebody get hurt and suffer an injury that takes a full year to recover from, especially at the kind of twilight of your career. But just seeing all these like, thank you, Allie, we love you, like, congrats on a great career, when she hasn't played in 2 years and Courtney's the one who just suffered what looked like a career-ending injury. It was just weird timing. Again, to be very clear, I'm not blaming I'm not saying they should have postponed this or done it differently. I don't think Courtney's mad about it. It just was just like I think they probably had to feel it as soon as that happened and they realized the scope of the injury to know, hey, in a few days, we're going to like release this big article about my retirement. And like, it's just, what a bummer. Like, what a bummer the whole situation is. I'm so happy for them. I'm happy for Allie. She's stepping into a role as a mom. As they had their baby girl was born just before Mother's Day. They announced that, and maybe Courtney will be joining. Hopefully, she can get back if that's what she wants to do and keep playing and keep pursuing Sue Bird's record for assists in the WNBA. But I just was very struck by all the posts I saw on social media and just the unfortunate timing that this was for the Vanderquigs, as they call themselves, the family for Courtney and Allie. On that somewhat somber note, that's going to wrap it up for me today and for this week here in the Locked On Zags podcast. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend, folks. Thank you again for listening, making the show your first listen or watch of the day. We'll be back next week. More on the NBA draft as we get ready for Ryan Nembhard, who hopefully gets selected, and find out more about what's happening with Ben, Nolan, and Caliph. We'll have more on the transfer portal, more on recruiting, more on the house settlement, the Pac-12 media rights deal, all of that. So much to talk about here in June on Locked On Zags. I love it. I hope you all are having a great time too. Once again, folks, have a fantastic weekend. And of course, as always, go Zags.